Hello, everyone, and welcome to Driving Student Success Through Innovative Communications Technology. This is a Times Higher Education webinar in partnership with Ready Education. My name is Alistair Lawrence. I'm the Head of Branded Content at THE, and I'll be chairing today's discussion. Please note that a recording of today's discussion will be available on demand, along with a summary article on the Times Higher Education website, should you wish to revisit this webinar or share it on social media or share it with colleagues. So I am delighted to be joined today by a panel of experts from academia and industry, who are Hayley Billington, Student Communications Officer at the University of Gloucestershire, Dara Pridia, who is Digital Content Officer at Nottingham Trent University, Anthony Phillips, who is Country Manager for the UK at Ready Education, and Marlene Tobias, who is Principal Administrative Officer at University of Wales, Trinity St David. Those of you in the audience today will be able to put your questions to the panel using the Q&A box provided in Zoom. We try and answer as many as possible of these during the session or in the closing 5 or 10 minutes. So please feel free to enter any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to get to all of them before the end. The past few years have accelerated digital transformation in higher education institutions, with online learning now becoming the norm. However, it's not only digital learning tools that have had to adapt, with communication strategies at the forefront of the new technical education landscape. The right technology can improve student success and engagement, but many institutions need guidance on how best to utilize new platforms and the new portals that they've been given. So with that in mind, I'd like to kick us off by asking the panel, how can you orientate new students on campus via technology? Hayley, would you like to go first?
Sure. Sorry, I know we were all supposed to speak then, and we were just
That's all right. No,
bit quiet. Well, a bit about my role then is as Student Communications Officer. I basically mainly manage the student app that we use via Ready Education, and so I guess I'd be coming from a space where how we orientate new students around campus is through the app. So at the University of Gloucestershire, we're actually spread across 4 teaching campuses. And so that's a bit of a challenge that we sometimes have, making sure they know where to go and things like that. So that's a really important thing that we think about with our student comms, and we're able to push out notifications using the app and things like that to help. Something we've done recently is invest in maps indoors. So I don't know if any other universities or institutions use that, but it's a really handy thing that we have, where all of the room numbers and locations of sessions and lectures are all listed on an indoor interactive map, just like Google Maps, but for a building. And that's a really great tool that we can use. So we've been able to use that in our student comms on the app to just make sure that students know that they can use that, figure out where they're going. And we also use digital signage around campus as well. So making sure that all of the communications that we are pushing out on other platforms are also mirrored in our digital signage around campuses as well, just to kind of cover all areas really. And that's the main technology that we use.
Are you managing or monitoring footfall on campus slightly differently now with the use of technology?
I don't think we are, no, not managing it differently. I guess just pushing forward, trying to be innovative basically with the tools that we're using. So I guess where if we looked back 5 years on how we were doing things, I think we would definitely be more technology focused because of the way things have become more remote through the pandemic anyway, but also just with how things are evolving.
And is it about managing the conversation you have with students now, if you are asking them to use more technology, because presumably you can gather more data and learn more insights about their habits and what their preferences are? Definitely
that, yeah, 100%. So something that we've done at the University of Gloucestershire is really push all of our induction to be used via the app with Ready Education. So that was something that we started in 2020 and now has just skyrocketed massively for our numbers. So the main way that students find out where they need to go on the first week of term and how they enroll is all done through the app. And so that's something that's massively evolved because of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Dara, what's this process look like at NTU? Is what Hayley's touching on, does it sound familiar, or have you taken a slightly different approach? How's it worked?
Yeah, fairly similar. We've just recently launched something called Maze Map, which is like a wayfinding tool. Like Hayley mentioned, they've got multiple campuses, so have we. And it's a bit like Google Maps, but we've been able to kind of pinpoint like various kiosks across the campuses. So whether that be like food outlets or support services for students, it's all kind of pinpointed in the map. So if, for example, if a student wanted to go and get their student card, they could just find the Student Support Services Centre, click on that, and then the map would kind of give them the directions to it. We've also used quite a lot of QR codes across our campuses as well. So if they're outside a room and they need information about how to use some technologies in the rooms, there should be a QR code there that will take them to the right page. So yeah, a similar approach that Hayley's been mentioning as well.
And has there been a different approach for international students to domestic students, or is it the same for the entire cohort?
We do tackle international students slightly differently because they're going to need a slightly different kind of service and support when they arrive. So we do use various tools to kind of personalize the student's journey depending on who they are, where they're coming from. So there was recently international students coming over. There was a personalized campaign for them about where to go, what coaches to catch, where to meet their right liaisons when they got onto campus. Yeah, I think we try to use the app for some targeted messaging as well, so that if they're in a particular group, they can see the right information that's just for them, and it's not they don't see anything that's not relevant to them.
Okay, and is there critical messaging that students have to receive during their first 1 week on campus, or fortnight, or month, or semester?
Yeah, so the comms that we send out tend to go out before they kind of start, and then there's like a checklist of things they need to do. So with the inductions, we try to make it as clear and simple as possible with what we're sending them. So there is like a checklist that they need to go through. It tells them in their course induction, it tells them what they need to have done by certain dates, and then they can also like access their timetables, find out where they're meant to be on the first day, what rooms, buildings, etc. to go to.
So those engagements started earlier in the year, even in the past 2 years or so?
I believe so, yeah. We tend to try and to kind of get them ready. We don't want them to just arrive and be like, oh, I don't know where I'm going. So we try to prepare them before they arrive. If they've got an offer and it's been accepted, yeah, they start getting that communications and all of that information before. Once they've kind of done all of their proper enrollment, and they can get straight into the app. So we kind of use the app as like our front doors where they then can access all the relevant services. So yeah, we try to get them enrolled as soon as possible so that they can get into all the various platforms to start studying.
And using that one app will be this is what accommodates the extra workload if you're perhaps starting engagements earlier than you would have done in the past. It's a way to speed up that process. Yeah,
mainly to get them prepared so that if they've got questions, or if something doesn't seem right, they've got enough time to kind of raise it with the right departments and teams.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We've also got Marlene joining us from University Trinity Davis St Wales. I don't know if we've had some slight IT issues with your lights gone on the front, Marlene, or if you can still hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, sorry. I know I seem a bit sort of dark on screen, but I am here. I'm hearing everything.
Right. Yeah, you're not in witness protection or anything, so it's fine.
No. I'm not hiding or anything. No, I am here. Right. I might need to try turn the lights on in a minute. Anyway, right. Yeah. So similar to Hayley and Dara here in Wales, we do exactly the same. So we're branded as the hub, actually. So we are hub the people, if you like. So we have we are the main point of queries for all our students. So any query the student has, they come directly to the hub. We have hub desks like Hayley and Dara. We have 6 campuses actually across Wales, and we've also got campuses in London and Birmingham. So within the hub team, we help students when they come to the desks on campus, but we've got a majority of students who are distance learning, so possibly may never come to campus, and so we support them remotely then. So again, we've got the app, so we've branded the app the Hub app. So we are Hub team who support students. But then the app is there as the main tool, and we encourage all our students to download the app. We go a step earlier, because the app is available in the App Store at all times. We ask students, it's there. So when students come to us at application stage or even before, we use the app as a marketing tool. So we've got all our programs listed. So if students want to book in for an open day or come and visit, then they can book via the Hub app. So that's our starting point of entry, really. So we sort of tell the students about the app at that point when they actually inquire about a course with us. As soon as they apply with us, then they've got an application in. We sort of communicate with them again, asking them. So once they apply, once they've been accepted, they see one version of the portal. And then once they become an enrolled student, they see the fully fledged portal, if you like. That gives them everything. And then, like Hayley and Dara, we have everything. All our welcome and induction content was on the app before students started. I think the carrot for us in the app is the student timetable. Everybody needs a timetable, and that's the only way we distribute our timetable to our students now is via the app. So it's our go-to tool. Students can access everything they need off the app, you know.
Okay, and then the hub integration that you're talking about is slightly different to what we've heard from other colleagues on the. So did that take a long time to integrate, or was it something that was always planned?
Yeah, it did. So it's only been launched 3 years ago, so still relatively new. So what they wanted, what the university wanted, and our Vice Chancellor wanted one main entry of queries to the university. So students didn't have to contact lots of different departments like our registry, our finance, our student services. So everything comes into the one place now, everything comes via the Hub, and then we triage out the queries. Sort of in 3 years, we've learned a lot. So we now than we did 3 years ago about the university. We can answer a lot of questions actually ourselves now, but when we don't, we sort of ask our colleagues in the professional units, and then we get back to the students. So we take ownership of the query, if you like, so we don't leave a question unattended.
Okay, and then how's the process been to sort of upskill and reskill the staff so that they feel comfortable answering those questions?
So we've been having like weekly meetings. In the beginning, we had weekly meetings with our professional units, so with the registry. So once we started, we could see there were themes. There were lots of the same questions coming in all the time, especially at the beginning of term. There's a pattern, you know, students tend to ask the same questions. So we would get answers to those, and then we would build on that, you know. And now we're always liaising with each other. We use Teams a lot then internally to liaise with each other. And if we've got a student at the desk, we need an instant answer, there's always somebody at the end of a Teams chat we can call, and we would get an instant answer.
Okay, excellent. This seems like a really good point to bring in Anthony, because for those you've asked in the chat, the app we're talking about is the Ready Education platform, which Anthony's here representing today. So as we've heard sort of 3 quite different case studies about how the technology is being used to achieve similar goals. Is this symptomatic of how universities are evolving in slightly different ways now? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Excuse me. Yes, I would say that there are very similar trends. By the way, these are all brilliant examples that I'm hearing. I would say that with regard to student communication and engagement, there's been a gap for a while, and it's something that we're trying to address at Ready Education. And I think it's My Day that's the app that's used by all 3 of you in the UK. We have a number of different apps, but the purpose is really to address that engagement gap, partly so students feel that they belong at the university. You've talked a bit about wayfinding and finding where you're supposed to be and all that kind of thing, but that, you know, what I'm hearing from universities is that actually that has an impact on their well-being, their performance, ultimately their success at the university. And often it is the timetable. As Marlene says, you know, it's just, I'm going to have to download the app because that's where my timetable is. But while I'm there, I might engage with some more meaningful content as well. And with pre-enrolled students or with new students, you know, orientating them quite early especially in the first 100 days, that's something that we keep hearing that the app is quite powerful at addressing, you know, just helping students to feel that they belong and they're not completely overwhelmed from day one. Just one question I was going to ask Marlene, actually, did by communicating with students that way, has that had any impact in terms of reducing the inquiries that you've had, or changing the, as you said, that a lot of the questions are the same? Has it reduced a kind of demand on
Absolutely. So this is what we've done. So we're looking back through all our queries, and there is a trend, as I said earlier, always at the beginning of term, maybe they don't remember their logins for my TSD or whatever. So what we've done is we've got a Q&A, so lots of FAQs then, if you like. So we just sort of update those on the app all the time. So there's like sort of questions and answers. We get common questions and answers. And then also we might improve the app, the content in the app some way. So we just try and preempt the questions we are going to get, especially at this time of year now, at the beginning of term, So yeah, the sort of queries have gone down substantially.
Sure, that's great. Can I ask another one, actually? Sorry, Alistair, to jump in.
All right, go for it.
And I guess this is for everybody, really, but in terms of international students accessing the app outside of typical university, support hours, have you found that students are able to get help from wherever they are at any time? Have you been able to kind of see that happening or not?
So we have the live chat facility on our app as well. So we've got the live chats. Obviously, we're not 24/7, but during office hours, but the live chat we leave on, but the live chat isn't available for them, but there is an email address to say, please email the hub and we will get back to you, as soon as we are open again in the morning or whatever. And that's been proven very useful for international students, yeah.
Brilliant.
We have lots of sort of partner organizations and charities that are available for our students, and we have a health and wellbeing dashboard on the app, so that not only international students but anyone really that needs support outside of office hours knows to go to that section, and then they can find what they're looking for, self-help apps or other apps, or helplines that are available when they need and things like that. So we're sort of using our app just as a signposting mechanism for things like that, so that they know that that is where they need to go to find what they're looking for.
And these, the other apps that you mentioned, Hayley, are these things that have been added sort of piecemeal, a year at a time? Were they existing student services that you offered that have moved online and been sort of more codified by having their own apps now? I mean, how has that network of apps been managed and grown over the past couple of years?
Well, it's a difficult one because it's all managed by a different team to the comms team, of course. So it's like the help zones that we call them have all these resources, and I do think that they have really gone more digital based in more recent years. But I think how we're just managing it is just making sure that we're linking up basically, so that our app is really, we're just using, especially that dashboard that I'm talking about, is just more of a place where they can then go on from there, rather than trying to host all of the information within the app, if that makes sense. Because students have so much information for them, not only health and well-being, but we have lots of IT stuff for them, and then just all of the general university comms. So we are just trying to segment it into the dashboards to make it easier for them to find. And I think that the health and well-being team at our university have really benefited from us having that specific dashboard, because they can also make use of it when they're helping students in person. And rather than giving them lots of different names of other apps or lots of different web pages for the students to go to, they just simply say, check the health and wellbeing dashboard on MyGloss, which is the name of our app. And then the student doesn't have to remember loads of different details. They can just go to that one singular source of information and then figure out where they're going from there. And we're just making sure that we're staying in touch with all the other teams around the university to make sure that everything on there is up to date and what we're using.
Okay, I mean, it's an interesting point that you raise about student wellbeing, because right in the thick of the heaviest lockdowns that we had in this country, that and also cost were two of the main things that grabbed the headlines, where people were very concerned about what it was doing to the student experience. Was there a pressure on during that period for you to shift more health and wellbeing services online, and for the comms team to really get the message out to students, and was having a app like My Day useful to do that?
Yeah, there was like an immense pressure on the comms team all of a sudden, because everything that we knew was sort of flipped on its head. And yeah, we were really lucky that we did have the app in place and that we were able to utilize it for the things we needed. So not only for like really important things about university closures and things like that were all done through news items on the app, but like you say, just having resources available, even links to online like sessions from the lecturers and things like that, was all done via the app. So yeah, we definitely needed it during that time.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, Dara, what was that signposting look like? How did it look like at NTU? And were there particular cohorts you became aware of that you needed to target, perhaps because they were slightly more vulnerable, or they just needed more support because of things like language barriers or international travel or various other factors?
Yeah, we kind of going back to Anthony's original question, we've got the chatbot, which is available kind of 24/7. So it had kind of frequently asked questions, and then it automated a response to send them to the right resources. We did find like during lockdown, if there were students that weren't able to get back home, they were the ones that we kind of spent a bit more kind of attention to, just to make sure they were okay, that they weren't lonely, because a few of them, if they were isolating, they'd be on their own for like 2 weeks. So just making sure that they knew where to get that support. So in some cases that might mean that someone actually had to physically go out to the halls and like put up some posters or just have a quick chat with them, socially distanced. We also tried to make sure that all of our kind of digital offerings were optimized as much as possible. So through the app, through our external facing website, through all of our intranets and SharePoints that we use, all of the digital platforms, just making sure that the messaging was consistent and clear, and like no matter where kind of a student or a prospective student came from, they were able to get to this wellbeing information or the support services information that they needed. Just make sure they were able to kind of get there from as many kind of avenues as possible.
Okay, and then how important is it to maintain that now? We're inverted commas back to normal, but of course we're not, because the blended offering has changed very much, and also the other pressure that's on all universities now is to provide more personalized learning pathways, which touches on sort of what Marlene said about how you may have some students who never come onto campus and they see that very much as the norm now. You may there may be a business case for extending university's international reach, so you may have more international students who do or don't come to campus. Then will be, it diversifies and changes in so many other ways. So in your role and in your team, is it a question of sort of shifting the messaging and the amount you try and maybe reach out to students slightly, or are you monitoring them differently to try and figure out how to help them better? How does it work?
I think that's kind of the beauty of the web, is it's always kind of changing. There's always room for improvement. So what's really valuable is all of those insights and analytics, kind of figuring out what's working, what's not working. It always helps to speak to the students as well. So we do try to run like little focus groups now and again. And I think it's just making sure that whatever we're giving them kind of works for everyone. So there's lots of different kind of ways that they can go about their study, whether they prefer having it in person or whether they want to do it online. I think we've taken that blended approach so that they can do both. I think with some courses, they do have to be there like physically, but other courses where they can do it online, they have the option to do that. All of their study resources will be in their learning rooms, and they've got access to their tutors as well through various avenues as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Anthony, if I can ask, are there any sort of tips or best practice you have in terms of looking for the right touch points and looking for the right data? One senior leader who I interviewed a little while ago had a bit of a bugbear about this, saying like, well, some platforms say they give us data, so what they really do is just give us information, and we're not able to pass that in a useful way. And there's so much of it that people get a bit overwhelmed by it too.
Yeah, I would say that there has to be potentially a little bit of work done, before really pushing out a full student app to every student at the university. So whatever groups are correct in the student record system, those are the groups that you can use to personalize content to them. Once that's in place, it's much easier then to pull out how that content is being digested or how that's being accessed, and who's, how many times are they accessing it, how long for. And I think, with regard to things like well-being, you want to kind of understand obviously the more serious things for interventions, but to be able to see how long a student is engaging, what kinds of things are they saying, that kind of more quality data is possible through a student app. Because if a student was to type in something concerning, then we can flag that up and not necessarily create an intervention, but customize the content for them in a way that then, it helps their experience at university. Because ultimately, the whole experience of university is going to affect their well-being, and it's not just one small part of it. So just pulling out some random data without any context, very, very difficult to work with that. But what I keep hearing from universities is actually what we need is to look at everything that the students experience, and not just one small part of it. So yeah, pulling data out of that, and an app is relatively easy as long as the data going in is good, but making sure that you're using it to in the right ways it's really, really, really vital.
So if you're giving universities advice about best practice about this, is it really about asking them to bear in mind key USPs about their university? So, where are you located? What type of student cohort do you have? What type of courses are they studying? What's the blend of international and domestic? Are there, if it's somebody coming in from an area that had very hard lockdown measures, or maybe culturally was very sensitive to hard lockdown measures, it's going to have a very different experience when they walk onto that British university campus for the first time to someone who perhaps is coming to a country more similar than Britain or who is British.
Yeah, I don't know if there is necessarily a really clear, that's the best way to roll out an app. But I think that taking a little bit of time over it is important, and getting students to contribute to the content as well. Getting student feedback and helping, not everything just being a message, directly from the university all the time, being pushed out to students. It should be a collaboration in some ways, and that can take time. It can take up to a year maybe, or longer, for an app to have all these different use cases in. But I would say that what tends to happen is, in terms of rolling out a new app, work out the basics of the things that you want to replace. If you are replacing anything, what would the app integrate with? So what has to be there on the dashboard when a student logs in? And actually, maybe they don't need to log in. Maybe it's a pre-enrolled student you're trying to communicate with. So just getting those basic things right then, and then what we're finding is that over time, over a year or two, other examples come in, like, what about HR? Can we put that in there? Could we put in finance information? Can we add student fees, library information? It starts to expand and grow. I'd say that's the best way to do it, is to think about the core functions of the university first. How do we present the university, and then build on it?
Okay, great.
I agree. Can I come in there, Alistair? Sorry,
absolutely, please.
So this is exactly how we did it. So like Anthony is saying there now, so we went in minimum in the first year, because this was something totally new for all of us as a hub team. So we just thought, right, okay, let's think of the basics. What does the student really need to get going when they start with us? Especially I'm speaking about enrolled students now. So they all needed their MyTSD, which is their student portal. They all needed a timetable. They all needed a well-being, sort of health and well-being tile. And there were lots of different, so we started off with maybe 7 tiles, which we thought were essential tiles. I think by now we're up to about 12. So it's something we expanded on then. So as the students used it, we held lots of focus groups every 3 months. We'd get a group of different students together on campus, distance learning, got their feedback, and we listened to the students, really, because that's really important. They're the ones who use it on a day-to-day basis. So it was crucial for us to get the student feedback.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, we're going to save most of our questions to the end, but we've got about 120 people in the room, so as you can imagine, there are quite a few that are coming in now, and there are a couple that are quite timely. One of them is from Chris Whitehead at Surrey. He said, has anyone replaced their website or internet for students with their app? And that they have both systems at Surrey, but it's attractive to have everything for students in one place. So I was wondering if the panelists could let me know, are there parallel systems with an intranet for students, or is it all app-based now?
Okay, so what we do at UWTSD is, so we have a tile, for example, on health and well-being, but then a lot of the information in there would be links away to, for example, our health and well-being website page. So we do have a lot of links out to the relevant pages. We don't believe in duplicating efforts. And also it's monitoring, it's one source of information you need for your students, really. That's going to be the correct information. So what we usually do, so no, we have our website, which is a very active, sort of busy website, but it's linking away then from the app, so to the main source.
Okay, excellent. Dara, what's this been like at Nottingham Trent for you?
I think, yeah, we take a similar approach. We use the app more as kind of, like I said, kind of a front door. So it's like the first thing they see, and then it signposts them out to the relevant information. We also use there's an RSS feed for like the newsroom, so that's always being updated, so they can see the most relevant kind of news pieces or important information or notices coming out. So I would say that they probably run side by side, and I think that's probably how we'll continue to do it, just because I think it works quite nicely. The app's quite a clear way of kind of guiding the student to the right information that they need.
Okay, great. And Hayley, what's the process at Gloucestershire?
Very, very similar. We do have an intranet, but we're using the app to be the forefront of that. And then like these guys do link out to the different sections and extra information that students need, but trying to avoid duplication at the same time.
Okay, great. We've had another question, which is perhaps a slightly harder one to answer, from an anonymous member of the audience saying, has anyone experienced barriers with students using the app? For example, if a student doesn't have a smartphone, and I guess I would add to that, being careful not to assume that just because somebody is from a certain age group that they are digitally literate in a way that they might not be. That's another thing that's come up quite a lot. So do you put in any extra support in place for students who are maybe a little bit technophobic, or they just aren't very confident using apps?
For us, if a student doesn't have a smartphone, but they are maybe using one of our computers on campus, or they're using their own device on campus, like a laptop or a computer, we've got the app to kind of force open at the beginning, so it's almost like their desktop that they see, and all the tiles are very clear for them. So we did actually create like a study at home tile, or like study support tile, which is quite visible and clear, so you can just click through to that. And we're just it's also kind of making sure that the content is optimized, so what we're putting on the screen is clear and easy for the user to follow, so it should hopefully work for everyone. As I'm sure many people are aware, users tend to scan the content rather than actually read it word for word. So also making sure that we're optimizing keywords and using the right kind of language to support them.
Okay, Anthony, you're nodding, perhaps with agreement, relief. I'm not sure which one.
I've not heard that before. That's really interesting about optimizing the language and students not really reading things. I've not heard that one before. That's interesting.
In Wales, we have to have everything bilingual. So our app is available in English and Welsh. So then it sort of doubles the efforts from our end, for inputting information. Yeah, but because we're a bilingual university, so we have all our content in English on the one side and then Welsh on the other. So, but going back to Dara's point, so what we do for our students before they enroll, we send them a video on the app. We send them video how to access what they can find on the app. And so we send them like a 4-minute video we've created ourselves in-house. And we send it out to the students as part of their welcome and induction materials. So they're very familiar with it before they start then.
Okay, that's interesting, Marlene. I mean, have you increased the amount of video content you've made for students over the past 12 months? Is it in response to anything in particular?
But it's just ease, really, isn't it, for everybody, if they can see something visually. I believe students, we don't believe in sending students lots of words anymore, because students, I maybe myself the same, don't like to read too much words per se, but if you give them something visual that's interactive, we do a lot of interactive videos and sort of subtitles and everything.
Okay, great. Dara, Hayley, what does the video content look like for students at your institution, and have you integrated it to the app?
The app has a functionality where you can embed videos onto it, so we try to kind of update it depending on kind of themes across the university. The biggest thing has been mental health and well-being, so we've got like a little animation that kind of stays on their dashboard, so that they can, again, I think it's like a minute long, so they can quickly see where to find like content, and it's kind of filled with like short URLs and all of that. I think we are increasingly using more short videos. Like Marlene said, I think the students are currently a lot more visual. They want to see kind of images, and I think it sticks in their head a bit more. So we're working kind of to create more animations, like 30-second videos, just to quickly send them off to the right place, or where to find their right learning rooms, or how to get onto a specific Teams chat, for example.
Okay.
Can I sorry,
sure,
can I
go ahead,
ask
yeah.
you a question there? Does students, so new students or students who are going to an open day, if you're giving them access to the app then, and I know it's not necessarily the full login and the full version of your app, but do you find that if they're able to access it from that stage, then they're more familiar with it when they do start in when they are enrolled in September?
Absolutely. Was that for me, Anthony? Sorry, was that for me?
Well, for all of you, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So we attend open days as a hub team. So every open day we have at the university, we go along with our hub team, and then we've got flyers we give out to them mentioning the app, ask them to download it, just to have a look around, really. And we just tell them this is their go tool when they come to us, because this is the only tool we use now for our students for everything, so this is what they will need to access.
Hayley, I had a question about, sort of builds on Marlene's and Dara's points, as to whether or not things like increasing video content or just diversifying the amount of content you're putting online, what the challenge is to knit that together with a wider marcoms and engagement strategy, I suppose, because you have so many avenues through which you can communicate with students, and we've covered off like why the app is important, and it can help you create more signposting than, say, a social media channel can. But is it about now, when you're looking and considering content for the app, that you're also maybe borrowing stuff from your social media channels, or you're looking for stuff that you can then reuse on social?
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely. Like, because my role sits within the communications team, and so does the social media officers for our university. So we are constantly using each other's ideas and content and things like that to kind of maintain a consistent approach. So we sit within the wider marketing department, and we're really going for a more social first strategy anyway. So mobile communications is really important for that. But it just ties in really nicely with, like you're saying about the video content. I was able to speak to my social media colleague the other day and say that we were trying to make sure students were downloading my gloss. And so then they just created a really short TikTok video of how to do that on the App Store. And that's just like another way we can sort of tie everything together. And then I've been able to use their content, even though perhaps they're doing stuff more for a student recruitment sort of side. So they're making really like wholesome videos about the campus ducks or the nice trees or something, but it was just fitted really well on the app for welcome messaging, just to say welcome to a new term, we're really excited to have you here. And then there was just like a perfect video content for me. So that was kind of like what drove a lot of the design work we've done on the app in the last year, because we're trying to make it look a bit more like social media anyway. And just emulate things like the video and almost like a scrolling banner, like an Instagram story sort of things, just to, like you say, do best practice in mobile communications, because we know that obviously that is what works with students.
Okay, and so is this something that you're mindful of when you're designing the various apps that Ready Education produces, that if you want to reach students more effectively, perhaps ones who aren't as digitally literate as they would hope, that if you can give it the look or feel of social media channels, then it perhaps takes some of the fear factor out of doing more technical work and more sort of study-based work through the app. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry,
it was just a bit of noise in the background. Yeah, absolutely. I think familiarity is really important. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to be something that students would expect, and a lot of students just expect there to be an app. Where's the student engagement app? But in terms, the other side of this is that students don't tend to manage email very well. They don't respond to email very well, sometimes ignoring it, and they will follow their notifications, and they will go between TikTok and YouTube and things, and the student app as well. But just one thing to say about integrations. Somebody asked actually today about does this integrate with Canvas or any LMS? An app can integrate with multiple tools, but it's not just about having, well, here's Canvas, here's the library, here's the email, here's communication channels. We want to pull the bits out that make sense to students at the right time and in the right way. So if I open the app and it shows me, here's your courses, there's the deadlines coming up, these are the loans you've got out at the moment, I don't even need to go to those other systems. I don't have to leave the app and come back again. So it's also not just about familiarity, but also the navigation should make sense. Let's take the bits of the LMS out rather than just having a button that says Canvas, because then you might as well just go to Canvas. Having it built into the dashboard is, the design choices. I mean, as a company, we work with universities to help them make those choices. But you can see quite quickly through the data as well, is that a good design? Are students actually using that part of the app? Sorry, that was quite a long answer, but
no, I think it covers it. And I mean, it's just in terms of I suppose I wanted to ask the university representatives in terms of the functionality that you have at the moment, or perhaps things that are on your roadmap strategically. Is there functionality or data that you would like to add to the app that you are maybe working on, or that you think might be useful in future?
The only function we are not using at the minute yet is the push notifications. So that's going to be our next step, I think. So when there's any announcements or any changes within the app, then the push notifications will come up. It'll show them on the app that there's something maybe we've added, say, within Moodle or within my TSD. And I know that's possible, but that's something that we haven't sort of implemented yet on our app. But otherwise, I think, we've been developing our app as we're going along and work with Ready Education. We meet sort of regularly. We like to be sort of keeping up and keeping ahead of the game, if you like. So, and again, with the focus groups, with the students, we just sort of try and meet their demands and needs.
Okay, great, thank you. Dara, is there anything that you've added recently that's been particularly effective, or that you think could be a good next step for you?
I think the most recent thing has been the wayfinding tool, which I know that staff are quite enjoying it and using it a fair amount, and hope that students are using it too. But as they've only come back this week, I don't think we've got enough data yet to fully comment, but I think it's a good tool, and I think it's definitely helping new students, particularly international students, kind of navigate around the campuses. Obviously, if it's a place they've never been before, it'd probably be quite nice to have like a personalized little map just for the campuses. We are currently doing a full redesign for students as well, so we're getting a fair amount of input from them as well as to what they want to see, just trying to make it as useful for them as possible. Also kind of investigating that personalization element as well to make it more specific to each individual user. Users don't want to see information that's not relevant for them, so we'll hopefully be looking into that soon.
Okay, great. Anthony, we actually had a couple of questions about the Wayfinder app right at the top of the hour. Could you tell us just a little bit more about that functionality? Because it seems that there are a few people in the audience today who are curious about it.
So we don't produce our own wayfinding tool, but we can integrate with a number of different things that are out there. I could name them, but I probably shouldn't. But there's a few that will help, not just wayfinding, but also booking resources, booking rooms, that kind of thing. And I guess by having it in the student engagement app, it's adding more value to that one place that students would expect to go. Somebody's asked a question actually about booking time with a staff member as opposed to booking a resource. Is that something that any of you do? No.
So it's like making an appointment with a lecturer or something. Yeah, we don't have that facility within the app. No, we don't.
Okay. I think it speaks to a greater point about the general level of greater need for personalization that we've seen staff talk about, particularly in our reporting over the past couple of years at THE, is that it's really a process of trial and error of trying to find what is the best solution for the largest number of people, which is not going to overburden your staff with work. But before we go into the Q&A section, the time we've got left, I wanted to also ask the panel about just you've all spoken about how you've collaborated with people in different teams or the content side of things. Has there been a stage where you've had to come together and say, okay, well, what is a reasonable amount of training and workload for staff to take on when they do use digital tools? I mean, the value add of this obviously is that you hope it would shrink the amount of time they're spending on administration and that they've got a useful tool and everything else. But it's, Marlene, is there a particular way that you've approached conversations with staff in order to be productive with them?
Well, I think for other professional units, it's a win-win for them because we are taking away a lot of the queries they normally had previously. So if we can answer the questions, say somebody would ask a registry member of staff or fees, then they're more than happy. But as I said previously, we do meet on a regular basis with all the heads of the professional units just to see a way forward. We're just going to make sure it works for everyone really within, all the professional units, And it's just communicating with each other as a team, as staff members as well.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, we spoke a bit earlier about the process of reaching out to students earlier in the student life cycle and onboarding them for a slightly smoother experience. We have had one question from the audience, which is to do with managing the other end of that. So the communications across the academic years and programs, and then also for alumni and guests. So I was wondering if Hayley or Dara, if there been any particular alumni engagement tools you've looked at, or is your focus more on the current students?
Our focus is definitely more on the current students, but it would definitely be something we want to look into. Just because we're already covering so much of the student cycle that it does make sense to continue that. I guess it's just one of those things that how many alumni keep the app downloaded on their phone after they've left an institution. But it is our most powerful communications tool for current students. So I don't see why we couldn't look into alumni, but we do use it for targeting level 6 students for postgraduate recruitment. So that's sort of at the end of the student time, but yeah, nothing beyond that at the moment. Okay,
I mean, I guess it's a bit of a tangential question, but when you look at how things like university open days are changing and placements with industry is changing over the course of the student life cycle, it seems that there are more touch points being created with alumni now as a result of that, because quite often the people who go off and start their own businesses or maybe work at big multinational companies, they can offer a range of student experience when it comes to things like internships and student employability options and things like that. So do you think it's perhaps a long-term project when you are looking at joining up comms for things like career days or industry speakers, where if you can get them to start using the apps for those touch points, there is perhaps ways to reach people in a convenient way that will help you strengthen that alumni engagement over the long term?
Definitely. Like you say, it's literally just trying to ingrain it into people's behavior, I suppose, isn't it? And if they're knowing that they're, like you say, the touch points for different things, then it's definitely more likely. And I do see that as a potential thing, because even just the last couple of years, we've put so much more on the app than anywhere else. So we will probably continue to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Dara, is your engagement with alumni increasing or changing, or do you think it's something that could do in future?
It's definitely increasing. We are focusing a lot of our resource on alumni at the minute. I think once they graduate, they lose their NTU ID, so they're not able to get into the app, but we are working on that. And I think what we tend to do is preempt them before they graduate, to be once you graduate, we haven't forgotten about you. You do have a wealth of resources available to you to help you with getting a career started, various different online tools to support them, and loads of guidance, and they've got access to advisors. So I think it's almost preempting them and then making sure they know where to go to find that resource. what we've started to do recently is like alumni stories. So putting that into like their newsrooms so that they can see it, read about it, and then potentially maybe come to us to do their own story.
Okay, great. We've got one very quick question that a couple of people have asked. Anthony, it's about whether you can, there's been, Marlene spoke about having dual language integration for English and Welsh on their app. Is this something that could be scaled to multiple languages?
Yes, so multiple languages are possible. We provide, Ready provide the functionality to translate and put multiple languages in different characters, but we wouldn't necessarily have the language pack ready to go. So we won't have Icelandic, for example, but you can have an Icelandic version as well at the same time.
Okay, great. We'll go through the questions we've got now. We've got the final 10 minutes left. So if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to put some questions to your panel, then please drop it in the Q&A box and we'll get through as many as we can. Daniel Griffiths asks, with the app being used pre-student starting, i.e. for open days, and then post-student starting, is there a functionality to use the app during the application process? Could you integrate push notifications to meet offers, conditions or options, or to pay deposits through the app? Anthony?
It's not typically something that our universities would do, partly because you haven't got the student data in the first place, so they're not enrolled. You haven't got them on the student record system. It's difficult then to manage it. But what you could do is have an integration with a tool that manages applications, that you could access through the app. But I don't think there's really a huge benefit in doing that. Yeah, that's the challenging bit. It's I think you have a separate dashboard, don't you, Hayley, for pre-enrolled students, but it's
for anonymous users, we do, yeah.
They're anonymized, aren't they? Anonymous, yeah.
But like you say, because we don't have access to that data, that we're unable to send out communication specifically to that targeted group until we've got them enrolled and like on the system. So it's just more of a like general access, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And Dara, is there any real change to sort of in terms of how you speak to students during the application process? Is it through totally different channels, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's because they can't get into the app without an NTU ID. We tend to use our main website. So we do a lot of personalization. So if they get an offer, they get like a little video that's kind of personalized with their name on it. But most of that content is on our main website or through email channels and social media as well.
Okay, great. And Marlene, I presume you use separate channels as well for that stage of the student journey?
We do. So so it's anonymous, like Hayley was saying, for the sort of before applicant stage, if you like. But as soon as our students are at an applicant stage, they've generated a student number. So then they log in with their student number, and then they see the first sort of welcome style dashboard, if you like, with us. And then when they enroll, they see the sort of fully fledged platform, so to speak.
Okay, great. Right, we've got just under 10 minutes left. So I'd like to ask our university panelists for some closing words of wisdom, if I can. I was just wondering if they could tell us what they think the most important thing or the most useful thing they've learned during the process of making the app central to what they do is.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, please do, Marlene. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think the beauty for us is that the student has got everything in one place. It's just the ease of navigating everything they need for their studies. Because when students start, there's so many different platforms they need to familiarize themselves with, and it's quite sort of overwhelming sometimes for students when they start. We ask them to look, their student portal is MyTSD, Moodle is the virtual learning environment we use for our students. Timetabling and so many other things, to have it all in one place on their phone. They don't need to go anywhere else. One login and that's it. You can access everything in your hand, really. It's just the ease for me, I think, which all students need. They've got everything in the one place.
Okay, and just to add to that, what is the single biggest challenge that still persists for you?
I think students forgetting their logins. So that's the big query we're having at the minute, believe it or not. So even though students get their email, their student number early on, as soon as they're an applicant, maybe in fairness to them, several months could go, even though we send reminders all the time in emails, pre-enrollment, they still seem to forget what their logins are. So we just then remind them, you know, we overcome that. It's just sort of communication with them really. But that seems to be the biggest issue we're having. So this week is our welcome and induction week actually in the university. I'm sure similar to other universities. So we go in and speak to the groups of students in person, show them the app. We do a quick whistle-stop tour of the app, tell them. And it's really encouraging this week. I've done loads of them. And I go into the sort of class and every student, the first thing I ask is, have you downloaded the Home app? And it's really encouraging now that everybody has the app on their phone, on their sort of tablets. They can access it on the sort of PC or whatever. So it's really encouraging. And, you know, I think we are getting the message out there, which is really good.
Right. And Dara, what's been the most interesting thing you've learned from seeing how students are engaging with the app? Dara, sorry, did you hear me okay?
Sorry, I think my internet kind of was a bit saying it's unstable. Sorry. What was
That's all right, no problem.
question?
I was just saying, what is I think what the most useful thing you've learned is over the course of seeing how students use the app?
The most useful thing is probably how they're interacting with it. I think the biggest thing we learned is they like to use the app to like log their attendance, so they can kind of see what their attendance is and where and also their timetables mainly. I think because it's visible, it's one of the first things they see when they open the app, so straight away they can see what their attendance is looking like, their punctuality, and also what their next lesson or seminar or lecture is.
Okay, and like Marlene, is the people forgetting their login been the biggest challenge, or is there anything else that's causing any issues?
That is dealt with by a different team, but I imagine, yeah, it is probably one of the bigger ones, and probably also losing their student cards.
Okay, all right. Well, sadly, we can't solve that today, but all right. Yeah. So Hayley, finally in closing, if there was just anything you had to add to Marlene and Dara's points about, you know, whether they think there's anything it's really sort of changed how you're working and how you think you'll work in future by having everything centralized on the app as it is.
Yeah, I think, well, for us, like our main focus has just been how we're balancing half and half on the app. So on one hand, it's just a really great resource for things like their email, their timetable, checking into lectures, but then we're also really trying to push it as a communications tool and for just something really handy for them to have as a student throughout their time at university. And we're trying to make it a bit more fun because of how well students obviously engage with our TikTok channel and Instagram. And that's what we're really concentrating on, is as well as obviously it being really a functional app, we also want students to use it just to find out what's going on campus. And that's what we're using the newsfeed for, or just some fun events for Welcome Week. We advertised the Welcome Fair with a big graphic, and they could click through that to book on and things like that. So we're just constantly trying to get that balance right in between functionality and then just some really cool tool for them to log on to and see what's going on that day.
Okay, great. Anthony, I'll come to you to wrap things up. I was just wondering, looking across the many university partners that Ready has across the UK, is there a general trend or something that you think all universities could be mindful of based on the patterns that you see emerging with your partners?
I was about to mention actually the attendance thing, because I think it's about visibility from a student's perspective. You know, how well am I doing? Am I on the right track? You know, and attendance monitoring is a good example of that. You know, so it's not just about the university recording attendance, but to present it to the students, and every time they open the app, they can see, they get a picture of how they're performing and where they're supposed to be and what they're doing. So I would say it's the visibility angle of it is absolutely vital for students to really get a picture of, you know, how they're doing, rather than kind of going through their course like a ghost, which I think I certainly did when I was at university. I don't think anybody knew I was there. So it was just, but but you know, it's not just the communication. It's not just about communication channels, but it's also about am I on the right track? Do I need to change anything? You know, and ultimately helping the students to be as successful as possible. And obviously, staying at the university is the first thing, but making sure they have a great experience and making sure that they you know, feel part of it for as long as possible. And all of those things are possible.
Excellent. Right. Thank you very much. We'll end things there. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've had really strong attendance and really interesting questions from the floor. Thank you again to our panel for giving up their time and expertise to give us some really interesting case studies. I feel like we covered quite a lot of the ground in 60 minutes. So thank you to Hayley, to Dara and Marlene. Thank you to Anthony and Ready Education for partnering with us today. Just to reiterate, there will be an on-demand recording of this session and also a summary article of its key findings hosted on the Times Higher Education website. Everybody who's attended today will be sent the link to that content when it's online. And we hope that you find that content useful. We hope that you find today's discussion useful, and we hope to be able to see you at future THE events. So thank you all very much and goodbye.